Now, Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon.
Welcome to this episode of Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Joining me on the phone, as always, it is the indefatigable Alan Niven. Bonjour, Alan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
Good. I'm thrilled. We've been having a good weekend. We recently put up our In Excess Andrew Ferris interview, and of course, we're back this time with Ben Wells of the band Blackstone Cherry. They have a new album out called The Human Condition, and this is what I find interesting with this band. They have literally been around for 20 years, so early, 2001, 2002, and yet for many people, they're still kind of like a new band, and they're still sort of finding themselves. And what do you think of a band that's sort of always been in that second gear? They're not arena bands, but they got a strong following. They've got a cult following. As a manager yourself, or formerly as a manager, what would you do to get them into first gear and get them, into an arena or get them into larger places? How do you what's the game plan?
Well, there's a couple of ways to look at it. And we were talking with, forgive me, that wonderful guitarist from Jethro Tull. Remind me of his name, please.
Martin Barr.
Martin Barr.
What a guy.
And I'm sure it's forgivable that I forget because I'm old and ancient and got big old holes in my head. But part of the conversation with Martin was that in talking to him, I pointed out that he reminded me of a period of time in the United Kingdom where there was a division in how you looked at bands. And there were the commercial bands, the very notable and successful ones, but the ones that were uber cool and the ones that you really went to different places to go see were quote unquote the underground bands. And part of the element of the underground band was, and of course, I'm sure there was a degree of obvious posing at the time, but it was a sense of, here's somebody who's into their music for what they say in their artistry, and they're not trying to sell out, and they're not trying to conform, and they're not hitching themselves up to a marketing machine. And I really believe there's a place for that kind of band who is quite happy not to be a part of the machine and not to be looking to grasp on the brass ring with calculation and strategy and whatever it takes, but are happy to be themselves, happy to be working, happy to have a certain following, and are basically an underground band. And, that's cool. I mean, you got to evaluate it. Certain bands are determined to climb to the top of their mythological mountain. Of course, when they get to the top of their mountain, they find it doesn't exist and it's a myth. But you don't have to be groping for the brass ring to be a valid band or a valid musician.
No, you don't. And it just and by the way, I'm not trying to suggest that Blackstone Cherry is not successful. I mean, they've obviously been around for 20 years, so they're doing something right. And listen, they've had albums that have been at number 28, at number 22, at number 40 in Billboard's Top 100, or sorry, not the Hot 100, the Billboard 200 albums chart is what I'm trying to say. So they do well. And they do the theater tours, and they do the 2,500 to 3,000 kind of seaters and stuff. But it's
that's really healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. But my point was that to get to Madison Square Garden, to get to Yankee Stadium, it really is rarefied air. So when you see a Guns N' Roses, or you see a Metallica, or you see Madonna or U2. It really is sometimes very difficult to get to that next echelon. And so anyway, the band is moving along and doing great. And the new album, Human Condition, is really worth checking out. I mean, that is really why I decided to do the interview. The label reached out and sent me a stream of this, and I was like, okay, well, let me have, and I listened to it, and I went, oh, okay, this is really good. Yeah, I'll give these guys a shot. You know, I'll talk about them. Let's get me Ben. Let's talk with Ben. And so it really is worth checking out, and a great band. But there you go. I was going to say one thing. They are from Edmonton, Kentucky, and I was like, there's an Edmonton in Kentucky? All right. But,
darling, there's a Paris in Texas.
I know, and there's 5 Montreals in France, apparently, so,
And isn't there a London in Canada?
Yeah, there's a London in Ontario, and you're just like, oh. And there's an Ontario in California. It's all screwed up, I got to tell you. There really should be a register, like a copyright thing, where you have one name, and that's it. You can't use it again. You can't be like, hey, I'm in Paris. Texas. No, there's one. Anyway, but I was just going to say, when I think Edmonton Oilers, of course, from Alberta, and hockey, and we're in this period of no hockey, and it's really, really hard. Please, come back, NHL. You can't leave us like this. This is too much.
Well, in the interim, you can watch soccer from Europe. They're playing the games, even though they're playing them in empty stadiums. You can.
I'm sad, not desperate.
Pretty good soccer. You can see some pretty damn good soccer being played.
Yeah, I'm sure. What I was going to say, though, is I think there's a conspiracy theory. I think that it's the Toronto Maple Leafs who control hockey, as we know, at least in Canada. They're not good enough to win the Stanley Cup, so I think they're making sure that there's no. You see, you can't lose the Stanley Cup if you actually didn't play for it. So I think it's the Leafs that are preventing hockey from happening. It's not a COVID thing. Well, it's a Toronto Maple Leaf thing.
The poor old Toronto Maple Leafs, I think the last documentary made about them was entitled 50 Years of Failure.
Hold on. Actually, there's a website or a Twitter account called, I think, the last time the Leafs won the cup or something, and they post daily and go, it's been 20,000 days since the last. It's the greatest Twitter handle ever. Anyway, let's get over to
people were wearing top hats when the Toronto Maple Leafs last won a cup.
Listen, people were using rotary dial phones when they won the cup. Did the moon landing occur at that point yet? I'm not even sure. Or was it after the moon? It was 1967 that they last won, so...
the moon landing was in 1969. So... yeah, there you go.
That's hilarious. And the best point is I was born after 1967. I was born in 1968, so I have never in my life, even as a toddler, had a Toronto Maple Leaf Cup experience. And you know what? Let's keep it that way.
Well, how long was it that Chicago went without winning a World Series? Wasn't that something like 102 years or something?
I don't have it in front of me, but I think it was something like 1908 or something. So, good.
Yeah.
May the Maple Leafs enjoy the same success as the Cubs did for the same amount of years, because I will be dead by then, which means I will have never seen a Stanley Cup championship in Toronto, which means I will have died happy. So, speaking of the human condition, that will be my human condition, happy. Let us get over to Ben Wells of Blackstone Cherry. Take it away, Ben. We're speaking with Ben Wells of Blackstone Cherry. The new album is called The Human Condition. As we say here in Montreal, Ben, bonjour. How are you? Comment allez-vous?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the band's been around going on almost 20 years, and I've always watched the band's videos on YouTube and stuff, and I've always loved it. But the record company sent me The Human Condition to check out before this interview, and I put it on. No preconceived notion of whether I'm going to love it or hate it, and I just put it on, and it was amazing. I got through the entire first song, and then I got to the second song. You have made an absolute masterpiece, and I just wanted to say that straight off the front. I mean, this thing is brilliant. So congrats. I love it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate those words. I mean, we are very proud of this record, and to release something in such a turbulent year like we've all experienced, and to hear people that have early listened to it say that they just absolutely love it. It really does our heart a lot of good to hear something like that. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And I'm telling you, when 2020 is over and we finish talking about COVID and all that, and we start talking about the best, football plays and the best hockey plays and the best albums and the best movies and the best this, I'm telling you, a lot of rock reporters are going to have this on their top 10 list, and I'm telling you, I'm pretty sure it's going to be in the top 5 for many guys. I mean, this is a solid album throughout. There is no clunker, there's no like, oh well, we have 8 great songs and a couple of filler. There's no filler. So let's start with that. Let's start with that. I mean, you did a couple of blues EPs, sort of tribute to the guys, and your sound changed a little bit here and there. But talk to me about going into this one. What was sort of the marching orders? What were you sort of thinking in terms of, we got to make this kind of album? What was sort of those conversations like before you went in? What was sort of the point or the purpose?
I think we all just, we've been on tour the majority of last year. Up until the end of last year, we were still touring. And I finished a great tour with Alice Cooper overseas, and that really kind of, rejuvenated us in a way, because that was towards the end of the Family Tree album cycle. And usually, sometimes by the end of an album cycle, touring-wise, you can get kind of burned out pretty easy. But that was a really big rejuvenation for us. Then we came home, and we did another tour, started in Iowa and ended out to California, and came back, and we ended in our home state of Kentucky, and that was really nice to do. And we were just talking, while we were touring, and we were listening to some old demos and riding around and discussing, okay, the top of 2020, we're going to be going in the studio, so what do we do? And while we never really try to, preconceive the album, we never want to sit down and make it a calculated thing, because that'll take the inspiration out of it once you get in the studio. You just kind of want to let it be what it needs to be. But we did say we wanted to make a big, loud, heavy rock record, and not sacrifice melody, of course, and some of the ballads, because we love that kind of stuff as well. But we knew we wanted it to be just, a little snapshot of some of our best pieces of all of our albums put together. And that's what we did when we were off to the races, and then everybody was kind of on the same page, just sonically, with how we wanted it to sound, all of the tones, and it came out, and we're just super proud of it.
Well, you should be. I've heard it. It's great. Quickly, you mentioned touring with Alice Cooper, which, as an Alice Cooper fan, I got to say that's got to be pretty cool for you. But Blackstone Cherry is not a band that is going to be a top 10 Billboard 100 band. You're not a singles band in a sense. So touring is incredibly important for what you do. At least that's my perception. This year has been an incredible cluster, what does it do for you as a band, and I'll even ask you as a business, as a brand, to not be able to tour the way that you want to, the way that you are used to, the way that you need to support a new album?
It's challenging, to say the least. It was a big shock, obviously to not only the world fans and everyone, but to the industry. It's like everybody's trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we do this? And I think in the beginning, everybody was, even though everybody respected what was going on in the world with the pandemic, and everybody kind of played ball for a while. But now I think everybody's kind of going, okay, how do we get back to work? We can't just continue just to completely stop, And so there's been some other venues, like we just played a show on Friday night in our hometown, a socially distanced outdoor show. It was absolutely perfect. They went by all the guidelines per the health department, and we've got a couple more of those coming up before the end of the year, and I'm really happy to see certain states and certain concert venues that have the room to allow us to socially distant are, putting on shows. They're being progressive and figuring it out because they understand too. They have to figure out ways to bring live music back, and we're happy to be a part of it because we've kind of stopped long enough. And like I said, while we totally respect the pandemic, it's like we've got to figure out ways around this.
Well, okay, so let me ask you about that and how you figure it out, because there have been bands playing. Some have done it very well, socially distanced, the whole thing, like yourselves, like Buck Cherry and others. And then there are others, and I'm not going to start naming names, but they've been playing to crowds and people are jammed in like sardines. What can you do if you're in a situation like that? Do you refuse to play? Do you just play? And at some point, how do you get on the road and have these socially distanced? Because if we're not selling full cap or max cap tickets and we have to do 25%, how does it become affordable for a promoter to have you in, and how does it become affordable for you to show up? So what are some of the ways that you have to sort of navigate to be able to maintain the band?
I think you just have to kind of be smart, and the thing is, so some of these venues that are doing the half capacities, even though it might be half capacity, they're selling either like a table or a pod, and that price is probably higher than it would be a normal ticket, because you're selling a group of tickets. So they're having, they're probably, the ticket price might be a little higher than normal to come to a show, because they still have to make up some back end, because there'd be no way possible for them to be able to charge low ticket prices and have only 50% of the people and still try to pay a band their guarantee, and it just wouldn't work. So there's a little give and take there. And then, but as far as like, other bands go, we rely on, merchandise sales, and a lot of bands are doing the live stream concerts, which are cool. And we have one of those coming up on Friday. And, everybody's just trying to figure it out, but they're trying to figure it out, safely and, whatever the right way to do it is. But I'm glad it's starting to happen. I'm glad the live music is peeking its head back out, because, people just need it. People they need entertainment and something to look forward to.
I fully agree. Now let's get away from the politically charged questions, right? Because that's not what we're here for. We're here to celebrate music. The album, The Human Condition, was produced by the band. The last few albums have been produced by the band. Talk to me about that, because you've worked with other guys. What was that, that decision? I guess Kentucky's the first one you produced for yourself. Talk to me about the decision to say, talk to me about that decision to say, you know what? We're done with outside ears. We know who we are. We know what we sound like. We know what we want to sound like. What are sort of the positives of taking over the reins and some of the negatives? I've always felt that outside ears sometimes lend perspective, but talk to me about producing your own albums.
Well, for us, we've worked with excellent producers, and we have learned a lot of things. But the unique thing about our band is that even when we're in the studio with producers, the four of us are so hands-on and involved. Some bands can hire a producer and they turn it all over to them, and they just rely on the producer to make the calls and to, come up with a lot of ideas and stuff. And we were kind of finding ourselves doing a lot of that, with them, of course. But I think it came to a certain point once we signed on with the Mascot label group who we're with now. When we signed a deal with them, we said, look, we want to keep creative control. We don't want to be A&R'd. We don't want to, if we want to work with a producer, we will. If we want to write with songwriters, we will, but we don't want to be forced into doing anything like that, because, we are comfortable with what we are as a band. And there's no sense, especially in today's world, to pay, a ton of money to a producer and then have them fly in here, or us fly out to California or Nashville or wherever they may be, and work with somebody when we feel like, we can create the same content, So lucky for us, our bass player, John, built an excellent studio out in the middle of nowhere here, and he's spared no expense with microphones and acoustically treated wood. It's incredible. And so we're lucky to have that. But I will say, with self-producing comes a big responsibility and some pressure. And once we got in the studio, especially on this album, we really, really turned up the heat to make sure everybody, performed the absolute best they could. We would, sometimes you can get, it's easy, if you're self-producing, you can slide something under the rug. But with this album, we were like, nothing gets by. No stone is unturned, no ideas left off the table, and everybody's going to be pushed, beyond their limits to get the best performance. And, you have to do that. And it's all out of love for each other because we all want the best, we all want the best product, the best outcome. We're all on the same team. So, it was quite the experience, but we loved doing it. And we just loved kind of being left alone.
Yeah, being left alone is great. Now, there's 4 guys in the band, and so in terms of production, is there one guy that takes the lead? And when the drummer says he has an idea, do you sort of just ignore it and go, dude, you're the drummer? Or, no, I'm kidding. I'm joking. No, but
for us, it's, I know. But, for us, honestly, I would say, Chris and John are probably the 2 that are the more studio equipped, meaning they're both really into Pro Tools and microphones and all that kind of stuff like that. But when it comes to literally the production of the album, parts, melodies, guitars, and we're all doing it together. We might have an idea for a drum beat for John Fred. Hey man, go try this. And he might have a melody or a guitar line for me or Chris, or a bass line. Just because I'm a guitar player, we don't leave any of that. We don't have any rules like that. It's like we're all 4 equals. So like if I've got a drum beat, I'll be like, hey, John Fred, let me get behind your drum set and show you this really quick. Try this. And he's like, absolutely. 'Cause again, we're all brothers. We all grew up together, and we all want the same thing at the end of the day.
Yeah, which is great. Now, you have worked with Howard Benson in the past, nominated for Producer of the Year Grammys, and he's worked with everybody from Canadians, A Theory of a Dead Man, Seether, Hoobastank, Crazy Town, POD. Talk to me about working with him, and what does somebody like Howard teach a band? Because he got you when you were young. I mean, I don't want to say you were rookies at that point, but you were still fresh. What did he bring to the table? And moving forward in making your own albums, do you look at what he does and goes, wow, this is great? Or you go, wow, we definitely don't want to go, how was it working with Howard?
Howard was Howard, yes, he's a legendary producer, and he's a very, very smart person, especially when it comes to vocals and melody and stuff. We had a good time working with him. It was a different experience than what we had been used to, because he's got, a team of guys that he works with that, it's really, this respectively, it's like a factory assembly, you know what I mean? Like an assembly line. It's like, you do this, the guitars with this guy, and then it moves over to this, and then the guy's editing drums over here, and then Howard comes in and does the vocals, and they really have their system down pat. But, for a lot of bands that works, and we really had it was a fun experience working with Howard, but, a little different than what we're normally used to, but we were able to learn a lot from him as well, but we just with each producer we've worked with, we've just liked to take up little pieces of what we liked about them and then just, use them and to our method of recording.
Yeah, I do find that sometimes some of the bigger producers really have a formula. And listen, when you're talking about Mutt Lange, you go, yeah, okay, the formula seems to work, but sometimes formula is just
right.
Formula, and it's just like, come on, this has got to be real, this has got to be earthy and kind of stuff. The band itself has maintained a release schedule, give or take, every 2 years, and I'm casting the EPs aside for this conversation, but it's 2006, it's 2008, it's 2011, it's you've been really regimented about sort of that 2-year cycle. Talk to me about sort of the importance of, playing out live, but also having new music coming out in a somewhat regular basis where the fans go, I know next year I got a new album. Talk to me about that and maintaining that. And can you maintain that forever? Or do you say, okay, we've done 6-7 albums, now we can sort of get the foot off the gas pedal, and Human Condition has a 4-year cycle?
We always try to, yes, we do try to hit that mark every 2 years, put out something new. And then in between, we'll put out, we've been doing the EPs now. And, I think our thing is, in the current landscape, people just need content all the time, And I mean, I'm guilty of it too. I mean, we all love when something new comes out. There's nothing better feeling to look forward to something happening that you want. And back in the old days, if you look back, I mean, hell, Jimi Hendrix put out 2 albums a year sometimes. It's like people, in a way, it's kind of going back to that, where people just, you put out more albums or EPs or whatever. I think people just need content instantly, and that's the way they get it on their phone instantly, and they just need to be instant gratified. And with us, it's like we want to continue to stay relevant and keep ourselves fresh, because there's a certain degree of overdoing it. We don't want to oversaturate, ourselves and keep putting out too much stuff or, too soon together to where people get burnt out on us. But also we don't want to, out of sight, out of mind type thing. We don't want to do that. So, but as far as the touring goes off an album, that all depends, I mean, on what opportunities are there. And, we've toured 2.5 years on an album. Some albums you can tour 1.5 years on, or, it just depends on what's out there, and what's going on. But with Human Condition, it will be a little different because, we're not out on the road right now supporting it like we normally would be. But so the touring cycle will pick up at a later time. So I'm not sure how it's going to pan out now, but I'm sure we'll still be putting out music regularly regardless.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. Now, I do want to talk about the touring and the early beginnings of the band. You have, of course, gone out on the road with some of the greatest bands from the 80s, the Def Leppards, the Whitesnakes. I'll even throw in Alice Cooper, even though he's more 70s. But then you've also done Airborne. You've done Theory of a Dead Man. You've done Nickelback. Do you have any thought in terms of brand association going into, hey, if we get lumped in with these 80s guys, fans will think of us as an old band? Or is that way overthought and you just play because you love to play?
Yeah, I think we just play because we love to play. I mean, yes, there might, it's all about, visual appearance to a degree. You know what I mean? And we don't want to go up there and play or open for a group that, to our fans might be like, wow, that seems odd, or, that's kind of different. But, at the end of the day, making fans is making fans. So if we can go out there and play, we love playing with different types of groups, and especially, somebody like Def Leppard, Whitesnake, those iconic, legendary bands. So it's like we're never going to turn that down, I think it's all about, but it is about being smart and figuring out, okay, what's the best look? You can't just take everything that comes at you. You got to be strategic about it.
You do, and that's why when you go out with Shinedown or Hailstorm, you go, it makes sense. Let me ask you about the beginnings of the band. So you start off in the early 2000s, and of course, at that time, rock music was certainly not in vogue. It was certainly not appreciated. It was all about, big beats and hip hop and top of the charts was very different. Talk to me about establishing a band in that environment. What was the beginning difficult for you? Did record companies look at you and just go, dude, you're 40 years too late? Or was there an excitement that here's this band that's young and hungry and creating their own sound? What was that like at first to get noticed? A major uphill battle, or good music's good music and it'll speak?
Maybe a little bit of both. I mean, I think in the early days especially, we would play any and everywhere that would have us. And even if we had to make up a venue or turn a restaurant into a venue, we would do it. We were just hungry to get out there and play. It wasn't about making money. It was about making fans and continuing to play and just get exposure. And I found around 2004, 2005-ish, when we started to do some showcases and started to talk to some more labels. Yeah. People would joke and say, man, we wish there was a Capricorn record still around out of Georgia, because you guys would have been great on that. Of course, Capricorn was, they signed Allman Brothers and had the total Southern rock movement, and people would say, yeah, man, this would be great if it was 1974, man, you guys would have been hitting your stride, and we took that honestly as a compliment. Like, we didn't really get too discouraged about that, because music always goes in cycles. But also, I think labels see that if you're hungry and you're eager to get out there and do it and work and I think they appreciate that work ethic too. And so, I wouldn't say it was totally. We did definitely have our turn downs and things, and people going, "No, I'm going to pass," or "No, it sounds too much like that," or "Sounds too southern, too bluesy, too this, whatever." Because our genre, even though we're rooted in rock and roll, we go so many different places. So some labels want to kind of pinpoint you into being just one thing, and we couldn't do that. But we were believers in ourselves, and we found a nice home now, and now bands can go out and just record their music themselves and put it out independently. So the label, while it's still a very big and important thing, bands are figuring out ways to do it around that. I think that's kind of cool.
It is. Well, and you mentioned that labels are still kind of an important thing. What purpose do they serve at this point? Because you look at Spotify and you look at the streaming services, and I just looked at the Universal Music Group last quarter, and they made $1 billion on streams, and I'm thinking Blackstone Cherry didn't make $1 billion on streams. So do they help the artist at this point, or are they sort of somewhat self-serving, where they take your creation, your creative spark, throw it up there and cash it in, and then they go, "Hey boys, love you, but we got investors to please." Do they serve a purpose, really?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think they do. There is good and bad about labels. Labels have a lot of network and outlets that we normally wouldn't have. You and I might not even be talking right now. If it wasn't for somebody at a label that put this interview together, which that's true. A good thing. They have a lot of creative outlets that are able to get some things done, distribution and things like that. Things that the normal person that plays music doesn't want to have to mess with. You know what I mean? It's just that's the business side of it. If you get too caught up in the business side, it can drain you very quickly. So that is a good thing the label is for. Now, granted, I think it's all about what kind of deal you make, too, and that's what we tell a lot of bands that might be looking at record deals or whatnot. I'm like, man, I'm not one to give you a ton of great advice on anything, especially, music business-wise. I said, but, just because we're all still learning, I said, but, just don't be too eager to sign a deal that you're going to regret later. Don't sign the 360 deal, sign this kind of deal. Just, be smart about it, and I think that, as long as you can be smart about it and sign a good deal that works in both favor, then sure. Otherwise, put it out yourself and
fingers crossed.
Be your own label.
Yeah. Now, correct me on the understanding of 360 deal. The 360 deal is essentially where they take a little bit of everything. They take your merch sales, they take your streaming sales, they take your 360 is they take a little bit of everything on that planet, right? On planet Blackstone Cherry. What a joy that.
There used to be a joke, and there was a joke back in the day that said, if you have a yard sale, the record label is going to take a percentage of that too. It's just because they were finding out that records weren't selling anymore, so they were taking money from the bands any way they could, which is insane. But I don't know if those are still prevalent now. I hope they're not as big as they once were. But yeah, they were taking a part of your merchandise, a part of your touring, a part of every single thing you made. The record label got a piece of, and thankfully we're not involved in that because anymore. We used to be at one time, but we got out of it, which was great. But I don't know if they're still signing bands like that or not. But it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, I know of a couple of labels that still do that. I was having a chat, and I'm going to keep away from names because I don't need to get anybody in trouble. But I was talking to a drummer on a major band who signed to one of these labels out of Europe, and they were like, "Man, they take 30% of this and they take 30% of that." And I'm like, "Wow, really? In 2020, they're taking 30% of your T-shirts, really?"
Yeah,
which
that's crazy.
Which shocked the heck out of me. But he's like, "Yeah, but the upfront money is great." And it's like, yeah, but anyway. So let me just end on this then. Yeah. In terms of merchandising, because you've had great T-shirts, great logos, great stuff. I've seen them at shows. I've seen them at shows here in Montreal where you're whatever. You're at a Metallica show and you see a guy walking around with a BSC a T-shirt on. You go, wow, okay, great. How important is the whole merchandising thing to you? Is that really sort of where the band comes into their money? Because record sales, with the streaming and it's not 1975 anymore. So is it really getting that kit to put on that T-shirt that really is important to you? Financially, I'm talking.
Oh, for sure. Merchandise is huge, and really it always has been. And merchandise has always been king, in my opinion. So I mean, it's one thing to have you want to have people become walking advertisements for you. Wear your T-shirts, and all of a sudden they're billboards, and people look, people might see it at my show and go, oh, I like that shirt. I'm gonna get online and see if I can order me that same shirt, or go to the show and get one. But there is more room there to make more money on merchandise. And lucky for us, we own our own merchandise, which is really good. And a lot of bands are taking control of that now too, because you can be super creative and come up with really cool, unique items. And as long as you can, own your own merch and not have to pay it out to a ton of different people and blah blah, then it can be really good.
It's the greatest thing. Yeah,
so,
it really is.
Yeah.
And I'm just I'm gonna encourage fans, by the way, when you are picking up band merch, whether it's Blackstone Cherry or Kiss or whoever, go to the official sites. I know when you're on Facebook, there's all kinds of like bootleg sites that pop up. Don't do that. Support the bands. Go to their official sites or their shows. Those are the only two places where you should be buying merch from. Otherwise, don't touch it. Right? I mean, that's sort of the smart thing to do.
You. Well,
yeah.
And also they're getting it official too. That bootleg merch is going to be, you're going to wash it like one time, it's going to wear off. So you don't even want to, it might be cheaper up front, but it's just, you might as well throw that money out the window because the bootleg stuff is terrible.
But you know what else is a problem with the bootleg stuff? And I actually had this conversation with Gene Simmons years ago. It's, you buy a Blackstone Cherry shirt from the Facebook pop-up that shows up in your feed, and like you say, you wash it once and it disappears. Guess who the fan becomes mad at? They go, oh, fucking Blackstone Cherry sells crap. Fucking band, they ripped me off.
Right.
And it's just like, no, they didn't. So
right, exactly.
And you can't have that, because now you've got a whole bunch of people pissed at you for having done nothing wrong. And so no, stick to the official sites, folks. And while you're there, buy the Human Condition, stream it if you want, but also buy a physical copy. It's nice to not just own air. I'm just going to say that because I'm old.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you saying that. I agree.
Yeah, and on that, thank you, sir. Always a great pleasure, actually. This is the first time we've ever chatted. A great pleasure, and continued success. And folks, the Human Condition is going to be on Writers and Reporters Top 10 this year. So don't wait for somebody to tell you it's good. Just go out, experience it, buy it. Well, in fact, I'm telling you, go check it out. So go check it out. Thank you, Ben. Great pleasure. Merci.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let me stop.